Good morning, good morning. We've received quite a few questions, so none of this has been put together by me. This is all questions from everybody across the campuses, gentlemen. A special thank you to...
Are they good?
Are they good? They're very good. Oh, you're going to be stressed. Aubrey van Heerden, Johan de Tooy and Emile Ludik from Cape Town, Rikus de Kolke van der Sant, as well as Patrick Windsor and Mark Cameron in Durban, and Heinrich van Jaarsveld, Jacques Leroux, and Christian Berger here in Pretoria. Just some of the few people that have sent through those questions. Ladies, where were you? Why didn't you send in questions? Don't worry, I'll ask on our behalf. But yeah, this is the NewBridge Graduate Institute Breakfast of Champions webcast. So let's get straight into it. And they didn't hold back from the get-go. It's lit. To both Victor and John, what is the most important skill or trait that has underpinned your longevity in rugby?
There's probably two. I think there's a saying one of the coaches always said is, hard work will always beat talent unless talent works. And for me, that was it. I think putting in the hard work and having discipline. Those are probably the two things. I mean, I've played through school level and there was definitely a lot more talented players out there. Even at under 21, there was players that was faster, bigger, stronger definitely. And it's just about hard work, putting in the hours when no one else is working, making sure, firstly, I look at my game and it was about lineouts, knowing more about lineouts than anyone else. And then also being in shape, being the fittest is always, as you get older, there's always these youngsters coming through. And in the beginning of the year, they'll be right there, and then you'll have to show them, listen, I can still beat you when you do fitness tests and stuff. And that's just when they've got off time to go out and work harder than they do. So yeah, I think the most important thing to be there for a very long time is to work harder than them and to have the discipline to keep doing that until you stop one day.
Yeah. John, you?
I can certainly back that up. I always used to look back in the bus, and he always have, after a game, a laptop with these big headphones, the noise-cancelling headphones, looking at the lineouts, trying to listen to what the calls were, figure out what he could do. This was, stuff that wasn't asked of him by the coaches, and he definitely did train slightly harder than I did. And so, yeah, hard work, I think, is a basic. I think one of the things that I do assist people to have longevity is also not to get ahead of yourself. And I always refer back to, we've got a code of conduct that's probably 4 or 5 paragraphs, but there's only really one line that really matters, and it's about putting your own ambitions behind that of a team. So to try not make yourself the priority, but obviously not to neglect yourself and work hard, but to make sure that you understand that you fit inside of a team, and that is the priority. So sometimes you have to bend and sway a little bit for the sake of the team and to create synergy. And so I always look at the people that I've met that are successful over a long period of time in business, in sport, everywhere. They always seem to have a perspective about themselves. You get a little bit ahead of yourself and you start believing your own hype. It's unbelievably how quickly the table can sort of turn. So it's important to keep perspective all the time. Have a little check-in with the mirror all the time. Check and see if you're working hard enough. Make sure that you're beating those youngsters that are coming for you. Make sure that you are, if you're in a leadership role, that you still listening as much as you listened the first time you were made captain. Yeah. So just to keep a perspective helps you stay in the game a little bit longer.
Speaking of captaincy, there's this relationship that happens between captain and coach. What is the typical relationship like, especially for the two of you who have captained at the highest level, your national team? And how's the pressure transferred between coach and captain, especially at a World Cup?
That relationship is always complicated. Purely because I think, and I speak specifically to rugby, a captain's almost like a mediator between players and coaching staff, so the coach represents the management and the coaching staff, and the captain represents the players. So you've got to have a very good understanding with the coach, but you've also got to be able to stand up to the coach, and also you've also got to take some heat from the coach as well. Sometimes the group might be going in a direction that the coaches don't like, and it's normally a good coach will come to the captain and say, I don't think you're actually on the right track, and you've got to bring that back down to the team. And vice versa. Sometimes the team will say, geez, we're training 5 times a day. We've got the All Blacks on Saturday. This doesn't make sense. And then I've got to go back up that way. So that's why I say it's complicated, because it requires a huge amount of respect both ways between captain and coach for it to work. Whenever it's one way, and sometimes it can be captain to coach, but mostly coach to captain, and it's more telling than listening in either direction, then it gets difficult, it gets complicated. But it is an important role, especially for a rugby team, for that relationship to work. There needs to be a huge amount of honesty, a lot of direct talk, and it has to be able to happen both ways.
Yeah. How do you even cultivate that confidence to be able to, as captain, go to your coach and say, we don't agree with this, or I don't agree with this, or maybe let's try something different?
Yeah, I first want to come to John, and I always get to ask a question where, who's the guy you looked up to the most? And I must say, John was one of those guys that I probably learned the most from. I started off as a captain with a guy like Joost van der Westhuizen, Corné Krieger, Ruben Krier, and they were very much there for almost the older guys, for themselves, and you almost scared of them. John came in, and he came in for the whole squad. He stood up against coaches for all of us. The team's best interest was always the thing he fought for, even if they had to go up against the coaches. And I think that's something I took into my captaincy, especially with the Bulls, where I got very close to a guy like Heineke Meyer. I mean, Heineke was a guy in the beginning that wanted to control everything. He wanted to make the calls on the field. And like John said, the better your relationship gets, the more you can tell him, Heineke, we can't do this. I need to make the calls on the field. I mean, we sit with each other 3-4 times a week. We know each other. I know how you think, but you need to trust me once we get onto that field, that I can feel the pressures and I can make the right decisions. But you need to have that relationship. And again, what John said, you have to make the decisions for the team, and you sometimes the guy that goes to the coach and say, Coach, this is where you want to go, or you have to go to your team. And a lot of the time it's some of the senior players that almost think they know more than anyone else, that you say, listen guys, we're in the wrong direction here. Let's go get back to earth, let's fall in, let's make sure whatever we decide, because you normally have like a senior group of guys that make a lot of decisions in a group. So listen, let's make decisions for the team and not for ourselves, because that can very easily happen, especially if you're in a very senior team with a lot of experience.
Yeah. How do you manage all of those? I don't want to use the word egos, but it seems like if you're saying the senior players almost feel like they know everything, it's almost that. How do you manage the egos, the expectations of the players while managing your relationship with the coach as well?
Yeah, it's about having the right guys there. And normally, like John said, the guys that's there for the team, it's got what's the word? Longevity, that's the word. See, also Afrikaans.
What's the Afrikaans word?
Marissa, help my, what's die Afrikaanse woord? Ek weet nie wat die Afrikaanse woord. Let me think about it. Yeah. But I mean, those are the guys. But I think it's nice when you've got the right guys there. They drive the character of the team. They're actually the guys that work the hardest. If there's guys that's falling behind, they will be there. But you can get a bad group of older players as well. I mean, I was there, and I'm going back to the Bulls where I was the leader. I think for years we had a fantastic senior group. In our last year there, we almost got involved in stuff we shouldn't have got involved in. We wanted to help picking new coaches. We wanted to help picking the board. And that's things that players, that's not where you should play. You should focus what should happen on the field. And that's where you actually need a strong coach also to tell you, listen, guys, you're in the wrong direction. And then the captain must realize that, and he must take it to the players as well.
I've got a story that backs up what he's saying, because that's exactly what it is. Your culture is based on what your senior group and your leaders are. My first experience with the Springboks is in 2000, and I was making my debut with Devet Berry, And we were chosen together, and the first day you get all your kit and it's exciting and you feel like $1 million. It's Christmas come early and it's a dream come true and there's huge excitement. You wake up the next day for your first training session and we come down to breakfast, and we're obviously early because we're the newbies, and there's a table with 4 of the most senior guys in the team. And you get your breakfast, you sit down, no one greets you. After 5 minutes, one of them asks if you lost. Asked us if we're lost.
Because you're sitting at their table?
Yeah, because we don't have one cap and we're sitting at... And I was like, it was quite a disappointing moment for me, because you've built up this... And then, but credit, we shared a room, obviously, and we did 2 things that night. We said, no, if we ever do play a little bit longer, we got to try and change the culture that is a slightly more inclusive, and B, get tattoos on our bum if we play more than 50 tests. So
the latter has happened, because you're on 100 and what?
You didn't get the other one.
Luckily, David didn't play 50 tests. So
I was together 50.
I would have been a Springbok 10 years ago, but now it would have been more of a hippopotamus. But that's the biggest thing, is you want to have a good culture. It can only be a top-down. So how your senior players or senior management behave is the culture that you're going to have. And it's either good or bad, depending on the kind of people that they are. And that's something you can't get around.
We were also in a team, and I'm not going to mention it, where we had to go to the coaches and said, listen, some of your assistant coaches, the culture's not right. I mean, there's a game on a Saturday, a big game, and then on Friday night, they will be out. They'll be coming in like at 2 a.m. And I mean, John had to go to the...
To be fair, at the time, we were probably older than them as well.
Yeah, it is true. But I mean, John had to go and said, listen, can't work like this. We need to...
We were just jealous.
We were...
Because you wanted to go out on that Friday night.
It's a
great.
fact. Yeah.
It's great that you guys were empowered enough to be able to make those decisions as well. You guys have great longevity, centurions as well. But how can you spot, or how do you tell if a player can become a Springbok? What is it about a player that you'd see on the field that you'd say, that's a future Springbok over there?
I think there are things that stand out on individuals. My best phone call I ever got was from the late Ian McIntosh when I was first selected back in 2000. And he was hard on me, but I loved that guy. He was such a great, firm, strong, honest coach. You know, he loved these players, but he was always straight, always honest, never ever sort of gave you a story. And he phoned and he said it was always a matter of when and not if. And I think what he meant by that is that you see some players and you just think he's got Springbok written all over him or her. You know, they stand out. I mean, yesterday we were watching an under-16 Ikawi Week final, girls final, sevens, and there's a number 10 there playing at first receiver for Gauteng, who was just incredible. She stood out, and then you meet her afterwards and you can just see there's this calm demeanor as well. And so I think there's 2 things. You get a certain degree of talent, and you either work at that talent, like Victor spoke at, and then with that comes a mindset or a demeanor or a state of mind. Sometimes you get, I always call it the worm. We've all got a worm in our heads, and we allow that worm to think about things and be paranoid and sometimes get nervous and stay away from that calm state. And then you get people that have just got complete control in the most chaotic of situations that have the talent and work hard. And you can see that shine through from a young age.
Yeah.
I think you need to find something that makes you stand out. I take an example, Willie Leroux standing at 90 test matches. When I looked at him as a youngster, back then I was part of the ownership of Boerland when he played there, and he had a certain skill of putting people away and seeing space. But he had a lot of things that he had to work on. He couldn't tackle, high ball issues. And still today, there's certain things that he's not great at, but he's got a certain skill that make him, that people want to pick him. Because if there's a certain time of the game, he will make a try for you. So it's something that makes you stand out. And for certain people, that's a talent that they've got. Other, they need to work, find something that makes them different from other players. So you either need that. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, like John said, it's character. You need character. I mean, you need to get in a team environment where you're not more important than the other people. You need to want to give to the team. You need to want to work hard. You need discipline. So the character with the talent, or with something that make you stand out, is very important.
Like sport has become so competitive. Craig mentioned a little bit earlier, just even at a high school level, how kids are already being poached for certain teams. What should sporting directors also be looking out for in trying to not only recruit talent, but grow talent to a national level?
It's difficult. Firstly, again, you just see people with certain talent that stands out. And if you can get to them and you can start working with them and they've got that right character, then you know.
And early on.
I look at netball more than rugby these days, and you can just see certain girls got a skill that others don't have. And they might still be a bit raw. You can see they're not coming from a big school or from even a primary school that's not focused on netball, but you can see the talent there. And then it's those kids that you need to be handpicked, and then you need to work with them. And if they've got that discipline, then they will make it in life.
To add on that, school sport's difficult to try and figure out who you pick out, because in school sport it's all about the hero or heroine. It's the scoring of the goal or scoring of the try or kicking the kick or making the shot. But there's so much talent at sport. I honestly do think that there's an opportunity when a director of sport at a varsity is looking for talent, is to look at the kids that have already clicked around work rate and effort levels. So someone who's getting more joy out of making a pass and being a Willie LaRue and putting someone into space than actually scoring. Now, those are the kids that get very little credits at school level. It's always the hero is always the kicker, the scorer, but I promise you, it's so easy to see the kids that have got huge talent and get and understand the synergy of a team, and the fact that the harder they work and the more passes they make, or the more rucks they clean, the better the team's going to do. And I often think that people identifying talent don't forget to look for those workers at school level.
Oh, well, hopefully their eyes are wide open now. You spoke of Willie LaRue earlier, and I remember even in the 2019 Rugby World Cup, all the pressure and criticism that he copped as well. And then in hindsight, no, it was an issue with his arm, his shoulder. How did you guys deal with pressure, societal pressure of from the outside, when you guys were players at the highest level?
It's a completely different ballgame now if you look at social media.
Yeah.
I look at just the different types of lives my kids have to live, or are living because of the constant, I guess, appraisal or scrutiny
as well.
through the social media platforms. That only really got to us at a later stage. So we didn't have 24-hour surveillance. Now, all of us, we all live in 24-hour surveillance. So anything you say and do is going to be held against you at some stage. It's all documented, and so it is a lot trickier. I think the same parameters exist around knowing that if you are in the limelight and you do play sport, or you put yourself out there and you're in a big role in a big business, scrutiny is part and parcel of the game. And you have to be very wise as to where you take your criticism. So if you listen to everyone, you'll go crazy. And if you only listen to your mom, you'll also get lost, because she's always going to tell you you're amazing. So pick a small circle of people that you trust that would give you good feedback. So as a rugby player, I had 4 or 5 people, and my wife was one of them. She found quite a lot of delight in telling me that I played terribly. No, I'm joking, but she would be the first to say, not your best.
Yes.
And that's when I knew that I had some work to do for the next week. But if you're going to listen to every journalist who's 4'2" with 3-inch glasses, you're going to spend your life panicking to death. Find a group of people that you trust, that have an insight into what you're doing, that you believe will give you both negative and positive feedback that you can learn from.
Being honest with you, Vic.
Again, I had a mentor that once told me, if the people say you're bad, you're only half as bad. But if they say you're good, you're also only half as good as that they say. So it's again that perspective. And again, I think there's so many times there's all this white noise. And I mean, we climb on that bandwagon because we have to build the game up. But for the players, they've got certain people, like John said, they've got certain things within that group that they believe in. that they want to achieve. So a lot of the other things around it is just white noise that they really don't get involved with. If they do, they'll go mad. But I mean, you must know who you listen to, what's the targets you want to achieve, and just focus within that.
How do we get young people to also buy into that? Because social media tells you the more likes, the more you liked. The less likes, the less you liked. And they start to buy in that even in their minds. How do we get them away from that thinking?
It's difficult. I mean, I'm just looking at my own girls to get them away from that and say, listen, what's happening on this phone, all the comments you get on the phone, that's not real life. And I mean, a lot of it, it's not even honest. A lot of people know what you want to hear, so that's what they tell you. Or someone don't like you, and they almost want to bully you on this thing because it's so easy. I've had in business where you start fighting with someone on an email. The moment you go and have a coffee with him around the table, it's completely a different conversation. And then you can actually sort things out. Over a computer, it's very easy. And you can be very brave as well. And you say things that you probably shouldn't say.
Capital
but
letters.
once you look a guy in the eye, I think then you get a real...
Yeah, it's tough when you're 4 for 3, hey? Going up against John Smith.
I'm not sure I got the answer, but I'm in a similar vein. It's very tricky because I try and promote. So it's hard because my kids have all got social media. Well, 2 of them. The one still, she's not 11 yet, so they're only allowed to get cell phone at 11 and social media at 12. And so I also can't stop them because I'm on social media. So, but I wouldn't say I'm an active social media, but I'm on social media. I do reiterate to them all the time that anything digital is not real. So, for example, you can't have a life that lives in the digital world. You can get information from the digital world, but when you want to create a relationship, it has to be face to face. When you want to address something with a teammate or a friend, it has to be in person. Because in the digital world, we don't have body language, we don't have tone, we don't have...
Correct.
You can be misinterpreted. In fact, you are more likely to be misinterpreted in the digital world when you communicate than in the real world. And I can tell you right now, I try and I don't know if I'm succeeding, but I try and get my kids to be able to interact with people, older, younger, wherever, so that they understand how to communicate in the real world. Because if they get to 20 and they've only ever communicated digitally, I do think it's going to have a negative impact on their ability to live a healthy lifestyle.
A normal life, yeah. And to be able to just have conversation and speak on things thoroughly. Yeah. Are you guys listening? This front row, that question was for you guys. Don't buy into everything digital, yeah? Live in the real world here. I want to speak about the real concern for a lot of South Africans, and this question has probably come up a lot more than most, of what happens after the 2023 Rugby World Cup for the Springboks. We anticipate there's going to be a lot of retirements. It's going to be a change of guard, new coach as well in the mix. How should South Africans support the team in that transition?
Well, we've got so much talent in South Africa. There's always players coming through. I mean, if you look at the World Cup, people said, well, if Andre Pollard's not there, if Lukanya Arm's not there, we can't win this World Cup. Then they fall out and everyone goes crazy about it. Now, 2 weeks later, both of them are back there. Now people don't know if they should be picked for the quarterfinal. I mean, that's much talent we've got in South Africa. But I think it will take some time, especially with the coaches. We don't know what's happening with Rassie. Is he staying for another year? So if he stays, I think there won't be that much change. It will probably be pretty much the same. Yes, there's maybe 2 or 3 players that will move on, but I think there's still a pretty big senior group that will play for another 2, 3, maybe even the next World Cup. So I don't think it's going to be that big a change.
Yeah, and I also think, let's say Rassie does move on, we've also got that Springbok management team with Dion Davids and Sticks have been there for a long time, so there could be a handover, which has never really happened in Springbok rugby history, where there's a sort of a passing on of a baton. But talent-wise, I think there'll always be someone. When Bakkies retired, we thought, what are we going to do? And then Eben arrived on the scene and became a Centurion. And when Eben goes, there'll be some other big angry South African waiting to take it on the mantle. So that is not your problem. It's around structures and consistency and good coaching. Coaching and management is a massive factor as to how you transition. And when you get that right, it seems like it's the same team over and over again. This team has got the ability to last another 4 years, even though it might lose 10 guys over the next 4 years.
Yeah. You speak of the structures, the things that we have in place in South African rugby to be able to have continuity. But we seldom see that in tier 2 and tier 3 countries. And there's so much talk, especially in this Rugby World Cup, around their participation in the competition. Should they be there? Should they not be there? What can South Africa do, South African rugby, the Springboks, in also aiding tier 2 and tier 3 teams to start, getting over those hurdles?
See, Victor's going to look to me on this one. It is a massive issue. I think if you look at the World Cup, we've seen a lot of 80, 90 pointers, and there's a vast difference between, I guess, the top 5 and the bottom 5. In between, I guess, is a bit more sort of egalite. But it all does come down to finance. When it comes to professional game of rugby, and I'll give you the example of Fiji. If Fiji had as much revenue as South Africa, they would be a far more difficult team to play against. Fiji doesn't have a league in its own country. The majority of their players play overseas and abroad. This was the longest camp they've ever had together, 3 months, because of more funding. And we can obviously see that this is a Fiji team that's actually can threaten all the way through to the playoffs. So South Africa does probably a lot more than most Tier 1 nations. We certainly have done a huge amount over the last 20 to 30 years for Namibia, for Zimbabwe, for Botswana, and yet it's always difficult because all 3 of those countries that I've mentioned, had they had the same budget or income as SA Rugby, would be in a very, very different situation. They'd be far more competitive. So the simple answer is, if World Rugby wanted to be more competitive, they're going to just have to distribute money equally.
Yeah, and it's so strange because South Africa doesn't have the biggest budget amongst the reigning rugby nations.
And it's also challenging because how do you distribute evenly when the money comes predominantly from top 8 teams that people want to watch play each other every weekend? So sometimes it takes a bit of pain, but that's the reality. That's why we sit in this position.
Yeah, there was someone who had tweeted that maybe even our tours, our June-July tours, the mid-year tours should be tweaked so that your A team, for example, like the Maori All Blacks or South Africa A, play a Fiji or a Samoa or a Chile. Would that work?
Yeah, but I think the one team we should be able or should try and help is probably Namibia. But again, what John is saying, finance is the issue. I mean, they need to get all their players, there's probably about 50% of their players playing in South Africa. How do you get them from their club teams or from their provincial teams to come play for the country? So that's very difficult. I had a little experience with Portugal now, where with the whole group, there's only 12 professional players. They do have their own little league, but I mean, all those guys are amateurs that play. So they had 2 months where they could prepare now, but they do have that Tier 2 6 nations where they play in, and that helps them quite a bit. So we actually spoke to Jaco Engels the other day, and we said, shouldn't there be, I know we've got the Africa playing against each other, but I think there's probably only 2 teams or 3 teams that can compete. The others are really way down. I think they must try and get something where the Tier 2 nations play against each other, where World Rugby fund that, and I think that will definitely help them.
And the other reality is that Tonga has gotten better and better, playing in a difficult pool, and the reality is there's a good chance that they won't play a Tier 1 nation until the next World Cup.
Yeah.
So how do you fix that?
How do you fix that? Okay, this is an open-ended question then, because ... It needs a lot of resolution, and it has to come from the top, World Rugby. What do the Springboks need to sort out before quarterfinal time?
I took the last one.
Yeah, this one's Vic's, maybe.
I think team selection is probably the biggest thing that they need to get right. I think they do have a few things they need to think about. I was very surprised with the team that they picked for this last game. I thought they'll go with a team that will play in the quarterfinal. For me, we always like to get a little bit of momentum, play together. There's a week off this week, so you can recover from that. So team selection is going to be crucial. I think the biggest thing is, who do you play at 10? For me, it's an easy question. I'll definitely go with Andre. I just think, what I saw in that first 50 minutes is just the calmness that he brings to the team. I don't think you're going to win. If you look at the Scotland game, if you look at the Ireland game, it's maybe 2 tries being scored. And yes, I don't say we need to kick for post every time we get opportunity. I still like when it's a difficult kick and you can kick it 5 meters from the line to go for it and put pressure. Then build scoreboard pressure, and then we will score the tries and get away from the referees. But we need to build scoreboard pressure. We need other teams to play. That's how we score, get turnovers, and then we will score. So I think the 10th position is important. And then again, we were in studio last week when Lukanya was there with us. If Lukanya is there and he's fit and he's ready to go, even though he haven't played, if I was the coach, I would like to put him into that 13 jumper.
You see, you've answered 3 of my questions all at once, because everybody, I think the headache is around Manie or who to start, Manie or Pollard, and then what Lukhanyo Am is going to bring to the party in the knockout stage. Who do you start at 10 in the quarterfinal against France? Because it's likely to be France.
We started arguing about this earlier. So I do think that we are facing, the challenge is that we are facing the home nation, so France. And France have, to put it diplomatically, bent as many rules as they could to get this World Cup. And so it's a World Cup that they've gone out of their way to get, and they've got the best team that they've ever had at a World Cup in a great cycle, and they do have a real chance. And all of that creates a subconscious perception with regard to the production crew, who's also French, in terms of angles and what they show and what gets asked for from referees, as well as referees and World Rugby in terms of this host nation with a team that has been ranked in the top 3 for the last 3 or 4 years. So that is, I think, the worry. There's an influence there. So my gut says if it was us, we would have always gone with a tried and tested guy that's going to get his kicks. And Andre sort of seems like the obvious decision. But I said to Victor, I said, sometimes I just love the way that Manie's played over the last couple of weeks, and he's really the most exciting 10 we've had in probably 2 decades. The first guy with kicks left and right, which means you can pick a fullback that doesn't have a left foot. It opens up your selection from an exit point of view, and passes magically like a sevens player on both sides. And he's the first 10 we've had in a long time that's got a turn of pace. So he adds something on attack. So my gut says we sort of start him, get in there, go guns blazing, almost like a Twickenham attack on the All Blacks.
Yeah.
And if it hasn't paid off by 50 minutes, we bring on
then we do the switch. Isn't it better to bring on an old head at that time, 50, 60 minutes, calm everything down, close everything out?
No.
Sure, Vic.
The one way I don't agree with John. So South Africa is all about pressure. We don't win rugby games with nice rugby, with beautiful passes, cross kicks. That's not how we win games. Although it looks nice, that's not how we win games.
We did with beautiful drives. We win
that's what
beautiful
we do.
drives.
And
Okay.
That's why you need to play a pressure game. So your kicking game needs to be there. Your defense. And Manie is brave, but he's small. That try that Ireland scored, if Andre was there, there was no chance that try would have been scored. Yeah. And that's unfortunate. Yes, he can come on, and if it's needed in the last 20 minutes and we are behind, then you bring him on and let's open up the game. Let's throw it around.
I think the reality is, I agree with what he's saying as well. It's a tough choice.
Not a tough choice. Easy choice.
I suppose it depends on the mindset, because in a quarterfinal, you have to almost be a little bit more conservative. You can't be fast and loose.
No, you need to play the way you always play. That's it. You don't change when you get to a quarterfinal and final. How do we win rugby games as South Africans? We win it by pressure. We win it by forward domination. We win it by driving mauls. So that's how we want to play. And defense. So we need scoreboard pressure for other teams, like in the 2019 World Cup. You think about the Wales game, we didn't get that scoreboard pressure, so it was kicking the whole game. England, we got ahead, they had to play, made mistakes, then we score tries, then we use our back 3 that's brilliant of turnover. But we're not going to go out, play off the half line, play 10 phases and score a try. I haven't seen that in 10 years.
I'd love to hear your thoughts as well, because this debate is going to rage on until the selection happens.
We'll only know in a week and a half time.
That's not our decision to make. So
Just on Lucanio, I want to bring him in here because I saw all the excitement around the team as well in his inclusion, being in the knockout stages, but bringing in a player that hasn't been battle-hardened, so to speak. Do you start him off the bench in a quarterfinal? Or do you gamble and let him play in a semi-final?
See, I maybe the conservative guy in me goes, if a guy's coming out and he's a world-class player and he's come off injury and you're not sure about how long he'll last, start him. Start him and see how long he goes. When he starts to fade, bring on someone else. But to then give it, I mean, remember, he's also going to have some doubt around his own ability to go the distance. And then you put him on at 30 minutes and he blows at 20, then it's sort of, it hurts everyone. My gut would be, if someone's coming off, they're world-class, Kanye doesn't have to prove himself. You start him, see how long he goes.
I'll always go back. I mean, let's say we were in a quarterfinal, you had Jacques Fourie coming back. He's fit, he's training well. I mean, you have to see him in training. He's training full out. You've got a week and a half. He goes through everything. I mean, we've been there where you haven't played for 4 or 5. It's just like 6 weeks. Isn't it a long time? No, I'll pick him.
You start him.
Same as Sia.
Yeah.
4 months and 1 day after ACL. First game, brilliant. But he started him, 40 minutes.
And he was
done.
brilliant.
Yeah.
He was brilliant. He was world-class. Let's talk a bit about the pack. Who starts at 8th man?
I'll go with Dwayne. Again,
would?
I'll go with Dwayne
Ooh.
at 8. Because, again, what I've just said, where do we score most of our tries from? Driving more. And if you look at stats, I mean, if Dwayne's the backlifter, I think we score 80% when he's the backlifter of our mauls. If he's not there, we're probably down about 40%. So I just think he brings something different, and he's not a guy coming off the bench because he doesn't bring that for you. Yeah. So I'll pick him, and then after 50 or 60 minutes, I'll pull him and I'll put on Kwacha in his place.
So we're going to argue again here as well. And I will say this: if it wasn't, I'd start Kwacha, especially if you're going to have Dion Fourie on the bench, because then you've got that guy who's going to kill the breakdown for the last 20, 30 minutes. But Kwacha's just got such an unbelievable effect on the game. You lose size, you lose weight, but his work rates and his ability to move around the park. And also, we've lost Malcolm, and so we don't have, in a starting pack, we don't have enough guys on the ball in the breakdown. And Dwayne would be my second choice. So I'd probably put Visa as third, because Visa just doesn't really put pressure on the breakdown. So Dwayne, if it's not going to be Kwacha, if I was picking, I'd go Kwacha, I would pick Dwayne, because Dwayne also does have an ability to attack the breakdown.
But, I mean, that's what's so nice about rugby. I mean, we probably think pretty much the same about the game, and we've got different opinions.
Absolutely.
And I mean, Rassie and Jacques probably sitting there arguing with each other as well.
They're probably laughing at us if they watch
us. They don't know nothing.
They don't know a thing.
They don't know what we've been.
I think the other thing is around the lopsidedness of the draw, obviously. And a lot has been said about that coming into this World Cup. But it will probably show now in the quarterfinals and going into the semifinals. How do the teams from Pool A and B deal with the fatigue that will come? Because it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, the top 5 teams in the world going head-to-head in a quarterfinal, then have to be at their very best again 1 week later.
You see, I see that as a positive. I honestly think that the side that we're on, we've been revving at 7,000 throughout the pool. And on the other side, they've been cruising at about 3.5. And so to get yourself, Victor will tell you get into a test match. In the first 5 minutes, you realize whether or not you are up to pace. And physicality is a massive thing. And there's been so much physicality and brutal test matches on the one side. Fatigue is not an issue. It's World Cup, 7 weeks. There's 38-year-olds that can do that, you know. And we've got 2 of them at the World Cup. He obviously did it as well. So I do think that our side of the pool, those teams that do get through, they're playing at a level, at an intensity that I'm not sure we've seen on the other side, which I think is going to be to the detriment of that, I guess, the softer draw.
Yeah.
Can you believe I'm agreeing with John 100%?
100%.
No, I'll rather pick the hard route, because you know you game ready, you're ready for all those knocks, you know what's coming. I mean, a team like England hasn't really been tested. I think they're playing fantastic rugby, and they only probably need to play 2 good games. But I mean, if you go into that semi-final, South Africa or France have played 3-4 tough games, and they know exactly what they're at the peak of their game. So I think it's going to be very difficult for those other
It'll be
guys.
more difficult for them. I mean, we've got England, possibly Fiji in the quarterfinal. And then the other quarterfinal will be a Wales, Argentina, or Japan.
Argentina.
Argentina.
so
I
as
still
well.
back Argentina as well.
And I think Argentina haven't played well so far.
They are
But I think they'll pick up their game, and I think they'll beat Wales in a quarterfinal, and they'll be in a semi-final
They'll be in
again.
this- Do you see an all Southern Hemisphere semi-final lineup?
That would make World Rugby very unhappy. But it would be quite lacquer though.
Will be nice. I don't think so. England's going to be there.
Yeah.
Fiji, I don't think Fiji's going to beat England
Yeah.
in that quarterfinal. Unfortunately not.
Do you see Ireland beating the All Blacks again? Ooh.
So the one thing, and we've just alluded to it, but the All Blacks' only really tough test was the first week. So it'll be a month. It'll be a month since they had a tough test when they hit the quarterfinal. Ireland are tidy. They're very good. They're very consistent. So I would say the money is on Ireland winning that game. But the All Blacks, if they get a good 10, 12-minute start and they put 2 tries on you, then it's difficult. It's difficult to chase All Blacks.
Yeah. Tickets.
Yeah, I said, I mean, both quarterfinals, us and France, All Blacks, Ireland. I really believe if South Africa play France 10 times, we'll beat them 6 out of 10 times, and they'll beat us 4 times. And the other side, Ireland, the All Blacks, I think Ireland will probably win 7 out of the 10 games. But in that quarterfinal, anything can happen. It's a bounce of a ball, a referee decision, a card coming out for something, an accident.
I do believe that the winner will come from those 2 quarterfinals.
Yeah.
Yeah, the winner of the World Cup.
Yes.
Interesting. How do you experience? Talk me through experience, because I think matches like that, that's exactly what you need. And BMT comes with experience, having been there before. Who do you think is the front-running nation as far as experience in BMT is concerned?
Without a doubt, the Box. The Box have won a World Cup. 85, 90% of that squad's still there. They've understood that dark place when the white noise is at an all-time high. I'd say that the team best prepared for playoffs, who's had the most experience, would be the South African team.
Springboks at the moment.
And they believe in the team and believe in what they're doing. I was actually, before the Ireland game, when Dwayne wasn't in the squad, I sent him a message, listen, everything is all right, what's happening? And he said, no, it's fine, it's great. I said, you're not a bit upset? Not. He said, no, one team, one mission. So they all bought
believe.
into what Russian Jock is doing within that squad. If it's changing the teams, we might even see us going with one team in a quarter, changing the team in a semi-final and going with another team again. Yeah. So something I would do, but I mean, if Russian Jock do that, the guys that's there believe 100% in what they're doing and they're buying into that. So that's great.
Yeah. Gentlemen, who's in the final?
Oh, please let it be Box versus
Who's
All
in the
Blacks.
final?
I want Box versus Ireland, and I don't think
want
the
Box versus Ireland?
Ireland won't beat us in a final. No chance. Never.
Box Island?
I'll take that. I mean, can we get Box Uruguay?
Yeah, that would be
Highly unlikely.
Argentina.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Like a
No,
semi-final.
we might have to beat Argentina actually to get into a final.
I
Which we will be able to do.
I'll say this. I box anyone, because if that team gets into the final, I think they'll be in a very good headspace.
I
They
really
have
believe
what
if
it
we
takes.
win this quarterfinal, we will win the World Cup again. This
We'll
is
win the
our
whole
biggest
thing.
test, the quarterfinal.
Why do you think Ireland is beatable in a final? Is it because they've never been there?
I just think, again, those players, I mean, it's Leinster in a green jersey. They've been the best club side for 2 years. They haven't won a cup. They've lost 2 cups last year. This year, 2 opportunities to win. They lost both of them. I just think that mental thing, when they
The
get to
worm.
a final, the
Worm
worm.
is going to come.
And you can try and talk away. It's almost, sorry, I don't want to mention it like our cricket team. the
The
Proteas.
worm again.
Everyone, it's a World Cup final, they start, and it's there. It's difficult to get away from that.
Sure. Okay. That's going to be a great final, though. I hope we don't play the way we played against Ireland in the
We're
beginning.
very lucky
when we
that
get there.
this quarter-final is going to be the most amazing game.
Yeah.
South Africa, France.
Yeah.
Privileged that we're there.
Yeah. As it stands, South Africa, France, because the math is telling us other things. But don't believe the math, guys. Ireland will beat Scotland. Don't worry. Don't you worry about that. Gentlemen, as we close, how can we use rugby, or how can we use what we do to inspire more young people to play rugby, especially beyond school level?
Well, I think rugby is that one sport that just do it in South Africa. I mean, if you look at 95, if you look at what 2019, what happened when Sia got back here. I mean, just Sia, the personality, what it means for this country is just unbelievable. I don't think, probably after Nelson Mandela, he's almost the second biggest influence in South Africa for giving people hope, seeing what you can do if you get an opportunity to use that. So I think rugby is doing it already.
I will say this, I think that there's a rugby community that transcends just what we see on TV. I look at the clubs and the people that participate, and I've met guys in their 50s that are still playing for the fourth team of their club, and I look at obviously I work with SA Rugby Legends, and we do a lot of work around the communities, and we do all the development of the game, and look at all of the 90% of the girls that played there yesterday in this under 16 week, rugby's taken them off the streets. It's given them some kind of purpose. As opposed to my daughter, who couldn't play rugby even if she wanted to because it's not offered at schools yet. Yeah. So there's this community, and every time someone has a hardship or a challenge, whether it's a Victor Matfield or a John Smith or some random guy that's playing fourth team at 52 years old, the community around every rugby team or organization rallies together. And so there's this togetherness, and I think that's why rugby has had this ability to give South Africa hope all the time, because it's not just watching Sia lift the trophy for the third time. It's the hope that the rugby community in that little town gives purpose to everyone as well. So rugby is I suppose we are biased, but it gives the community something.
Is that why you love the sport? Is that why you love rugby?
Yes, I just want to add on that quickly. So one of the things that actually stood out for me when we talked about Dubai Sevens, is some of the players that go over and go play for Hong Kong Rugby Club. And it's just unbelievable how that rugby club, everyone that goes there to go and play a little bit of rugby, how that rugby community support each other and how successful they became as businessmen and so on. So I think that's something, again, if we can, and it was like it, I remember especially in Durban when we were playing, it was a very strong community where people look out for each other when they play for Rovers or they play for if we can get it in Pretoria where a Harlequins club or Pretoria or Nakabula, the Nakabula got it a little bit. They really look after each other, they give each other jobs, they look after the guys even off the field. So if we as a community can support each other like that, it will be fantastic.
Let's close. Why do you love rugby?
It's a sport that I got into late as a South African kid, only 11, but it's been an integral part of all the lessons I've learned in life. I've learned from a rugby team, and it's certainly had a massive impact on every decision I've taken subsequently, high school, varsity, in work, everything. Everything, I guess the person I've become I've become through the game of rugby.
Gives you a place of belonging. I think we started off with Betway with the community, and everyone always talks about, are we going to see Springboks coming out of whatever we're doing? And I said, yes, that will be fantastic, but that's not why we're doing it. We want those clubs there for people to belong. Those coaches should be mentors to those kids. They should be father figures for those kids. So if you've got something, and I see with my daughters as well, if they play sport, they belong to something. And that just helps them so much because that community, when they're down, pick them up. When they get ahead of themselves, they pull them a little bit down. So you need to belong somewhere.
Belonging. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you so much for being such an awesome audience as well.
HSIO.